Ken Rosenthal, MLB Insider. Ken, how are you? Where are you? Are you in Baltimore yet?
Britt, I'm in Baltimore, and thanks for that. And I want to say that I am happy to have someone on this show who finally understands me.
Oh, I feel so bad for you, Ken. You're at the highfalutin Four Seasons in Baltimore. You stole my game this week, you bastard. I feel so bad for you. Let me guess. You're going to a nice dinner tonight in the Inner Harbor,
False.
False. You're going to a bad dinner at the Inner Harbor?
No, I'm going to be in my room working, AJ. You know that.
Oh, okay,
that's why I owe
Ken.
you 33 dinners, man.
Okay, Ken. I know it's rough life at those Four Seasons you must stay in.
Ken, thanks for squeezing us in between massages. Work calls. You talked about the other day in one of your newsletters for The Athletic about the NL Cy Young race, which, as you mentioned, is just very meh. What are your thoughts on this? I'm pretty much assuming you're not a voter. You couldn't write about it. I have MVP, which is always very, very stressful. How do you feel about the NL Cy Young race as we get down into deep September?
The problem, Britt, is that too often now we don't see starters going 200 innings and making the traditional Cy Young case. And the two best ERAs right now belong to two guys who are probably going to finish with about 180 innings. I'm talking about Blake Snell and Justin Steele. Zach Gallen, who Tyler Kepner wrote about today in The Athletic, has a greater number of innings, about 187, but the ERA is a good amount higher than those two. So we're looking at a group of pitchers that doesn't exactly resemble Garrett Cole, who leads the American League in innings and ERA. That's the kind of profile that I generally look for. And I know ERA is not a perfect metric, and I know rate stats matter and all of these things, but at the same time, we're looking for the best pitcher. And it's a difficult thing to define nowadays because you don't have a guy necessarily going 230 innings and leading his team in that sense. It's just a thing of the past. People talk about expected stats, and those are all well and good, but I think AJ would agree, and Eric too, that this is a results-oriented industry. This is not about expected stats. It's about what you actually do.
Okay, wait, Ken, you never answered the question. What award do you have a vote for this year?
I can't say, AJ.
Hey, Ken.
I can't say.
Wait, you can't? Nope. I'm not allowed to say what I have?
No, you can, but I can't in this particular case.
So he's voting for the Cy Young. He has the NL Cy Young. That's what he has. Because he won't give us a winner either. You're such a bully. You little sneaky person, you.
Don't let Ken, blink twice. Blink twice if it's the NL Cy Young.
Yeah. So, but Brittany, what Brittany doesn't understand, though, is she just told us she has this MVP vote.
She can say that. I can say
I understand, but she doesn't
understand
it. She always understands. She doesn't understand that once you tell me who you have a vote for, I always make you say on the air who you're voting for, and you never will. So now I want to know, Brittany, do you have NL or AL?
Well, I don't know. I can't tell you.
Oh my gosh,
AJ!
Wow!
If I were a voter for this particular award, I would be at this moment undecided. I don't know who I would vote for because it's wide open, really.
The three candidates that most people talk about are the three you mentioned, right? Gallen, Snell, Steele. And they all have different pluses and they have different minuses. I think if you would have said 2 weeks ago, Snell would have had this thing, I don't want to say locked up, but he was ahead of everybody, right? Steele has come back. His last couple starts kind of jumped right back in. Gallen's been kind of the most consistent all year. Snell got off to a rough start, had the real high. Now he's kind of fallen a little bit. It's going to be crazy. Is there a way someone could sneak in that we're not even talking about?
Yes, and he's pitching tonight. Spencer Strider.
Spencer Strider,
crazy strikeout numbers, rate, total, however you want to look at it. He has the widest margin between expected and actual ERAs among starters. So if he gets hot again, and he's had two really uncharacteristically poor starts in a row, if he gets hot down the stretch, not that it's really going to matter for the Braves because they're going to clinch any moment now, but I can see him becoming part of the conversation as well. He's been part of the conversation. It's just those last few starts have not been what we normally expect from Spencer Strider. And he's had some inconsistency all season long. He's had some blow-up starts, which all pitchers do, of course. But he has not been necessarily as consistently dominant as you would generally want your Cy Young to be.
Just like all the other Cy Youngs, you said, it's kind of been meh. So what is going to be the separator? Because in MVP voting, it's like, well, who is the most valuable player? Aaron Judge was the most valuable player. How do you separate that with Cy Young? Because it's really just a dude playing on an area where there's no grass. Like, he's just he's a lone wolf out there. So you can have a guy like Blake Snell on a team that's 8 games out winning it.
Eric, it's totally subjective. And that's the beauty of these awards. You can argue about them, you can debate them. In Snell's case, 2018, when he won the American League Award, I believe it was with 180 innings. Verlander was at about 215. It's a 35-inning difference or so. Not sure the exact numbers. And Verlander had the higher ERA, but I felt because of the innings he should beat Snell. Now, Snell won the award. Snell is going to finish with about the same number of innings, most likely this season, in that 180 range. In this day and age, that probably would be enough for him if he continues pitching as well as he has. He does have the highest walk rate in the majors, which is kind of crazy considering he's so successful. But that is where we are now. Justin Steele can't be ruled out either. He's pitched extremely well all year. He has been very consistent. Doesn't, again, have the innings portfolio that maybe you would want. But as I wrote, it's not 1973. It's 2023, and different standards apply than they did then. And as voters, the people who are voting for this award have to look at it along those lines.
Do you have an amount of innings in your mind that, you just compared Verlander and Snell, 35 innings, that's 1 inning a start. That is, while it may not sound like a lot for everybody who's watching, that is a lot of innings. So do you have a separator if somebody's 10 innings separating each other? Does that sway it, or does it have to be more like 15 or 20?
Eric, I don't go hard and fast on anything like that because it's just too rigid. You look at kind of a number of things, innings being one of them. But the year that it was Verlander versus Snell, 2018 American League, I felt 35 innings was a huge separator. And you said 1 inning per start. I looked at it as 5 7-inning starts. And when you have that much higher a total, you'll have a greater margin for error, right? You're pitching more. So your ERA likely will be higher. And at the same time, that kind of pitcher, let's use Garrett Cole as an example. He is saving his bullpen. He's putting his team in a better position to win, not just on the day he pitches, but on subsequent days as well. And while that doesn't necessarily fit the definition of the award, which is best pitcher, it factors in for me because there is value in that kind of starting pitcher.
Ken, you mentioned it, the Snell Verlander. The year Snell won it, he was known as like a 5-and-dive guy. I mean, he hasn't really changed because he throws such high pitch counts, right? And the thing you always look for, and I agree with everything you're saying here, you always look for guys that could go deep into games. If you're doing starting pitcher for Cy Young, because you want, like Kratz said, 35 innings. That's just saving bullpen guys. That's saving your team. That is what you look for the definition of Cy Young. How come there's no NL relievers that we're talking about this year? Is it just a down year for the NL and relief pitching?
Good question, AJ. I haven't really considered any NL relievers. Obviously, we've had some good ones, Devin Williams being maybe foremost among them. He comes immediately to mind. But to win this award as a reliever, you have to be pretty much lights out the whole year. And I do not like voting for relievers for this award. It's just, to me, more of a starting pitching award. There have been exceptions to that, of course. We know that. But I don't see it that way. Some people will say the MVP award is more suitable for relievers because of the value they give their team on, say, 60 to 70 nights a year. I sort of see that a little bit better, but for Cy Young, it says best pitcher. To me, it means best starting pitcher.
Wouldn't this be the year a guy could sneak in if there was a guy having a great year? Because, like we talked about, there's not a starter having a great, like a truly. In most years, there's like one guy that you're like, okay, this guy's having a historical year. Boom, he's the obvious choice. Well, this year, like we're kind of, it's almost like we're trying to talk Ken into who he's voting for here for his NL Cy Young vote by talking about all this. So this would be the one year you'd think in a reliever if there was one, but obviously there's not one other than Devin Williams that is having a great year where they could sneak in and steal one.
Yeah, I don't see it. And there's not that kind of guy out there to really challenge the starting pitchers. In the conversations that you're reading about with writers starting to look at this a little more closely, you're not seeing much mention of relievers at all because it is a year in which there are a number of interesting starters, maybe not slam dunk Cy Young types, but guys at least you can feel comfortable voting for.
Can we go to your dork of the week from Fair Territory and
Sure.
talk about, since we have a Beltway representative on our show here today, Can we talk about what you know about how all of the Strasburg stuff went down, didn't go down, never happened, internal discussions?
Well, Britt has been all over this, so I actually should defer to her. But I will give a rough overview, and then Britt can chime in with more detail. Clearly, the Nationals wanted to do something for Stephen Strasburg. They wanted to honor him in some fashion. And as Britt reported, once they decided to do that, there were some people who said, do we really have to keep paying him if he's retiring? Well, the answer is yes. You do have to keep paying him through 2026. He has a guaranteed contract, and you signed him. So that seemed to be what caused the initial backing off by the Nationals. Now, they, of course, deny that. They say that, no, we always knew we had to pay Stephen Strasburg. We would never even think of anything but that. Well, then why did you cancel this, and why did this all happen? They can say, well, it got out in the media. Well, how did it get out in the media? Who do you think told the media initially? It wasn't made up. I don't think it was Strasburg. He's kind of a quiet, reticent guy. So it comes back to the Nationals and their ownership and their occasional lack of understanding about how the game works and how money needs to be spent. And the key line in that press release from Mark Lerner last Friday was, we look forward to seeing Stephen in spring training. Stephen is physically unable to pitch. You may see him in spring training if he stops by to say hello, but he cannot rehab. He's not going to be pitching in 2025. He's done. You know he's done, and that was a little bit of a jab. That's why I made him Dork of the Week. For that jab alone. It was unnecessary, it was spiteful, and frankly, not the way an owner should be conducting himself.
Yeah, Ken. And then, of course, this morning, Mike Rizzo walked it back and said, well, all we meant was he's on the team and we hope to see him this spring. And you and I and everyone else here on this show and listening knows that's not what they meant. But this is an ownership group that when they bought the Nationals, couldn't believe they had to buy baseballs. So, they didn't know that was included in the cost of buying a baseball team. So we are dealing with a little bit of an unusual ownership group. Ken, I want to get one more question into you. You're obviously in a hotel room because you're in Baltimore for the big series that starts Thursday. 4 games with the Rays and Orioles. This is pretty much going to decide the American League East, no, in your opinion?
It could. And a lot depends, of course, what happens tonight, too. If this gets closer, if it gets down to 2 games, then this series becomes a little bit of a different animal. If the Orioles extend it on the first night of this series to 4, then it becomes tougher for the Rays, and certainly they can win the next 3 and close it. All these variables are in play. We know that. And at that same time, once this series is over, there's still 2 weeks remaining in the season. So it's not over. But this series could prove decisive. Certainly, if you're the Orioles, you want to hold serve at the very least and split this 4 games. But the Rays are playing really well right now. They had an unfortunate game last night that they kind of blew. But overall, they're playing well. The Orioles are playing well. And that, to me, is what is so exciting about this. These are the 2 best teams in the American League. Not the Yankees and Red Sox. No, the Orioles and the Rays. And you look at Houston. Houston's not playing at the same level. Just got beat by Oakland twice, for goodness sake. Texas has had its problems. Seattle could be this team, but is not at the same level record-wise. And then in the Central, the Twins are good. I think they're better than they've been in recent years, and even in all those previous playoff years where they've lost in each case. But right now, it's the Orioles and Rays in this division and in this league. And that, to me, is what is so attractive about this series.
Oh, is that why you stole my game, Ken?
Now
AJ,
he's the bully.
If only I had the power to.
Oh, you have the power, Ken. You have the power. We all know you have the power, and you used the power to get me from going to Baltimore to the other 2 teams you talked about, the Yankees and the Red Sox. Did you ever see this coming where the Yankees and Red Sox would not only be fighting over last place this year, but they're fighting to stay above 500, both of them?
AJ, it's shocking, and there's no other word for it. We've all watched both teams all year. We know that they're flawed in each case. What's interesting about both of them is that they have some young players that they're looking at right now, and that are kind of interesting. And the Jason Dominguez injury, obviously, is a real blow to the Yankees for that reason, because this was a time for the Yankees and the Red Sox, for that matter, to examine what they have going into 2024, and it's not hopeless. in either case as far as young players are concerned. But each team is going to have a lot of work to do this offseason. And with the Yankees, we've heard about this internal review they're going to conduct of their operation. Well, they need to do some things differently, and that's become pretty clear. They are too station to station. They're too lumbering in many ways, not athletic enough. And the Red Sox, they've got a great offense. They've got to fix their pitching, and my goodness, they need to play better defense and run the bases better. So it is shocking, AJ, that we're sitting here even considering, with Fox having 2 games on Thursday, Yankees, Red Sox, and Orioles, Rays, that one of those games is not as attractive as the other, at least from a competitive standpoint. It's the standings. And that's where we are. And it's kind of cool for the game, honestly, to see this happen. It's really cool. And the Orioles are going to be good for a number of years. The Rays are always good. So the Yankees and Red Sox have a tall task ahead of them. It's not going to be easy. And don't forget the Blue Jays, who, if they ever get their act together, perform at the level that they're capable of performing at, are right there in this mix as well.
AJ brought it up earlier in the show. I don't know if you were listening. Is the AL East maybe a little down? Not taking anything away from Britt's Orioles. They are a really exciting team, but is this AL East, they're not the AL Central, but are they not as powerful as we all thought they were going to be at the beginning of the season? And does it kind of diminish what the Orioles are doing?
No, I don't see it that way. And the Yankees and Red Sox, for all their problems, they're 500 clubs. They're about 7 games out of the wild card, each of them, and that's actually not that bad. It's just bad for them. So the division is ranked differently than it has been in the past. It's ordered differently, but it's still full of quality teams. And as bad as the Yankees and Red Sox have been in a relative sense, they're not the Tigers and Royals. They're not the A's.
Hey!
They're nothing along those lines. So I don't see it that way at all, Eric. Maybe we perceive it differently because the Yankees and Red Sox have been the sports superpowers in many years, and they're not now. And I don't know that we'd call the Orioles and Rays superpowers. But at the same time, when you have 5 teams that could finish with winning records, it's a pretty good division.
Shots
All right,
fired.
Ken.
Ken.
I know.
He didn't say
Ken,
the White Sox. He said
Well,
the
does
Tigers and the
AJ
Royals.
want me to mention the White Sox? Would you like me to talk about them?
I'm not allowed to talk about them anymore.
Yeah.
Good idea.
AJ's in trouble.
Suspended.
The White Sox are a model organization in baseball, for anyone listening. I don't know why anyone would say anything differently.
Whoa, Britt, hold on.
They're just the model.
Did AJ get his wrist slapped or something?
I was suspended. I was suspended from Orioles games because of what I said about the White
What he
Sox.
said.
Sounds like you got a gag order on the White Sox to me.
No, I told you what happened. I was supposed to do the Orioles game, and because of what I said, now I'm not allowed to do that. They sent you instead.
Or
I
did Ken
think
and I realize you would maybe come to Baltimore and pull some strings and say, you know what, this guy's got to ship up to Boston.
Yep.
See you later.
True.
I don't know.
Britt,
Maybe.
according to AJ, I'm running Fox Sports, so I'll just have to make some similar decisions as we go along here.
The commish. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, right.
As always, Ken Rosenthal with nothing but the inside scoop. You can listen to Ken right here on this network, Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal. New episodes drop every Monday. You can get it on iTunes. You can get it on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, submit questions. Ken, once in a while, will answer questions from us lowly peasants who aren't